Okay, so I'm sure we're all well aware by now that the Thunderbolts asterisk has been renamed to asterisk the new Avengers. The Thunderbolts are the new official Avengers team. They occupy Avengers Tower, and the new name to the Thunderbolts movie is, in fact, the new Avengers. Cool marketing tactic, but it led me to think of an interesting question. Who would win in a fight? The new Avengers or the original Avengers? And I mean the original six from the 2012 film. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, obviously the original Avengers, right? Obviously they'd win. The new Avengers are just a couple super soldiers, like what? But my version of the new Avengers is going to include Sentry, who in the movie is said to be stronger than all the Avengers rolled into one. Now, is that cap? Is that true? Well, you guys, let me know what you think in the comments, because I'm about to let you know my opinion, okay? So, the way I want to do this is 1v1 fights between each of the new Avengers versus one of the old Avengers. Bearing in mind, there are 7 new Avengers and only 6 original Avengers. I'll get to that when we get to that. It starts off pretty straightforward. For example, for the first fight, I say we have Black Widow versus Black Widow, round 1. Now, Yelena isn't even officially Black Widow yet. I'm just going to call her that. I think it's the obvious choice for what her superhero code name should be, but I don't think she's actually been called Black Widow yet. The younger sister to the OG Black Widow, who would win in a fight? Yelena as she appeared in this new Avengers movie versus Black Widow as she appeared in the 2012 Avengers film. Now, both of them would have the same training, like the exact same. They would have passed all the same classes. I think in the universe of the MCU, Natasha's Black Widow was a maybe more of a prodigy, better student from the Red Room, possibly. In the comics, it's the other way around. Yelena is actually a far better, she got far better test scores than the original Black Widow in the comics. But I think based on having seen the Black Widow movie, the Hawkeye show, and the new Thunderbolts movie, I think that the original Black Widow would win this fight. She's the older sister, so presumably she probably had more experience by this point. Not to mention, within the Black Widow movie itself, Natasha was shown to be doing a lot more crazy stuff than Yelena.
Surrender to them, Yelena. I know when you're outmatched.
But I have her!
You have nothing.
You may be well trained, but some things you only learn from experience.
I see Natasha's Black Widow as having done crazier missions and more stuff to be worthy. Not to mention, in the new Thunderbolts movie, Yelena says that she sucks. She says she thinks that she sucks, and I don't think Natasha would have said that. So, by her own admission, by my experience argument, and having seen the movies, I'm going to give it to the OG Black Widow. That's 1 point to the OG Avengers. Black Widow wins. I had a feeling Black Widow would win. Anyway, round 2, another, I think, obvious matchup to try and keep things fair. Captain America versus US Agent. Or you could say Captain America versus Captain America. Either way, this one might seem a bit more obvious, but let's hear me out. Both of them have the super soldier serum. Both of them are superhumanly strong. Both of them have had crazy experiences. Granted, in all likelihood, Steve Rogers has just been with the super soldier serum for, I believe, longer than John Walker would have been with it. And even if it kind of evens out to the same time frame, one of these guys fought in World War II. The other one, he fought in wars and stuff, but he wasn't a super soldier back then. It's a different level of experience and gaining skills, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have to give this one to the original Captain America, largely due to experience, the fact that the super soldier serum seemed to mix better with Steve Rogers than it did with US Agent. US Agent was a bit unstable before he got the serum, and then I think US Agent would get too emotional when he's fighting Captain America, and that would give Captain America the edge. So I think the original Captain America, Steve Rogers, would win due to experience and the fact that Captain America's not crazy. So, unfortunately for US Agent, he's down, which is 2 points to the original Avengers.
Victory!
Round 3. Iron Man versus Ghost. You might be thinking, how is this the matchup? But, you know, they both kind of have tech suits with like helmets and stuff. So I think it's the fairest matchup for now, at least. Hear me out.
What you can't see can hurt you.
Maybe I can't see you, Casper, but I can hear you.
Ghost has some really crazy powers, being able to phase in and out of reality, being able to almost teleport. You know, she's not that fast, but she is able to, you know, be in one place and then all of a sudden in another place. How are you going to hit someone like that? You feel me? Iron Man, and this is not Iron Man as he appeared in Endgame with the nanotech super suit. This is Iron Man 2012. Incredibly powerful superhero who would definitely put up a great fight with Ghost. I think how the fight would go, though, is Iron Man's ability to fly makes this an easy fight for him. He just has to fly up and keep shooting his guns at Ghost. Ghost can only disappear for up to a minute. Eventually, if they're in an open field, for example, she'd reappear and he'd be able to, you know, even if they're in a city, Iron Man can scan, see her biometrics whenever she reappears. She can only go Ghost for a minute at a time. Whenever she gets tired, reappears. He can still be flying and he can go and end her. So I got to give it to Iron Man. And heck, even if he's not flying, I got to give it to Iron Man. I mean, let me know what you guys think. I think it'd be an interesting fight. I think Ghost has really cool superpowers and could beat a lot of people just thanks, like, she's a little OP as far as street level heroes go. Like, I think even Moon Knight would probably struggle with Ghost. You feel me? But Iron Man, I'm going to give it to Iron Man. So that's 3 to the OG Avengers. Iron Man beats Ghost. But that would be, I think, the closest fight of all the ones we've had so far. I think, actually, that's cap. I think all these fights would be relatively close. Believe it or not, I think like the 2 Black Widows would be a close fight. I think that Captain America and US Agent would be pretty close, and then Captain America would definitively win. And I think Iron Man might struggle for a bit, but then would definitively win. So that's 3 to the OG Avengers. Next, Hawkeye versus Taskmaster. I think that's a more obvious matchup. They both use bow and arrows. And, you know, they have similar skill sets. And that makes the most sense. I mean, we can say that they're only allowed to use bow and arrows and their fists. So they're, you know, even though that doesn't make sense, Taskmaster's ability to use a shield and sword is part of why I high-key think Taskmaster would beat Hawkeye. I'm sorry, Hawkeye fans, but Taskmaster, whilst not being a super soldier, I don't think, their ability to mimic anyone's abilities, which I know in the MCU is a bit questionable as to whether Taskmaster can even still do that. But that's Taskmaster's whole deal in the comics, and I don't want to strip that off this character. So I want to give this character the benefit of the doubt that based on how they are acting in the new Avengers movie / Thunderbolts, they still know how to, you know, fight really well and use people's abilities, which would mean that if it's comic accurate at all, Taskmaster's bow and arrow skills would be on par with Hawkeye's. But the thing is, Taskmaster would also then be able to use everyone else's abilities, whoever he wanted, or she wanted rather. So yeah, I think even the inferior MCU version of Taskmaster, because the comic version is amazing, but even the MCU one, I think, would beat Hawkeye in a fight. I think that if it's anything like the comics, Taskmaster's bow and arrow skills would be just as good as Hawkeye's, but Taskmaster has a sword and a shield and other things that they can do to take the fight to Hawkeye. So I'm going to say Hawkeye loses that one because experience-wise, at this point, this version of Taskmasters would have been doing loads of missions like their whole life. I'm going to give it to, you know, don't downplay Taskmaster. Even the MCU version, that's a cool character in general. The source material is just so good that even the inferior MCU version is still kind of cool just because of that. Taskmaster is just a cool idea. So, sorry Hawkeye fans, but that's 1 point to the new Avengers, whilst the OG Avengers have 3 points. Now, I've almost lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, hear me out. Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, versus Red Guardian. you're probably thinking, what the heck? How is this a matchup? But like I said, I want to do this on like a 1v1 basis before I talk about how I think the fight would go if it was just one big, brawl. So Hulk is the result of a super soldier serum experiment gone wrong. And Red Guardian is arguably the result of a super soldier serum gone wrong. So I think there's some similarities there. They're both superhuman-ish. But I don't think we need to say much to say that the Incredible Hulk would obviously decimate Red Guardian. Shout out Red Guardian. He has super soldier serum. He's a strong superhero. He knows how to fight. He looked cool in the movie, believe it or not. Nevertheless, he doesn't stand a chance against the Incredible Hulk, obviously. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. So it kind of goes without saying. That's 4 points to the original Avengers with only 1 point for the New Avengers. So definitely not looking good for the New Avengers. And that brings us to round, how have I forgotten again? Round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Round 6. Thor, the mighty Thor versus the Golden Warrior for Good, the Sentry. / Bob / The Void. Now hear me out. Sentry's the strongest new Avenger, and Thor is the strongest OG Avenger. So it makes sense the two fight. They can both fly, they both have like crazy superpowers and super strength and are like god level. So it makes sense the two would fight. And I think in a lot of ways, this fight is really the only fight that really matters, because Sentry, in my opinion, would easily defeat all of the other Avengers. Even the Incredible Hulk as he appeared in 2012, I think Sentry would knock that guy out. The same way the Sentry is able to defeat the Hulk in the comics. I think even just from what we saw in the movie briefly, Sentry would be able to knock out the Incredible Hulk. And he'd easily be able to defeat the two regular humans on the team, Hawkeye and Black Widow. And then, he'd be able to split Iron Man in half, at least 2012 Iron Man, really easily. Captain America, no chance. We just saw Sentry take on like 5 Captain Americas, and he didn't even he barely lifted a finger, in that fight. Like he wasn't trying. I can't even say he was barely trying. He wasn't trying. He beat 5 Captain Americas. He wasn't trying. Even if it's the original strongest version, Captain America, no chance. So that is not an issue for him. The only original Avenger that the Sentry would have any difficulty fighting with would be Thor. If there were, updated Avengers like Doctor Strange, for example, then maybe we have a conversation there. But 2012 Avengers, Sentry versus Thor is the only fight that matters, because if the Sentry is able to defeat Thor, the Sentry is then able to easily defeat the other Avengers, which means he doesn't even need his New Avengers team, but the W would go to the New Avengers. Sentry alone would be able to save his team, the New Avengers, and do the fight alone and solo the entire original Avengers, if we're to say that Sentry can beat Thor. So this is the only fight that matters, because if Thor can beat Sentry, then Thor equally is also strong enough, I believe, to easily defeat all the other New Avengers. So if Sentry loses, then Thor alone could defeat all the New Avengers. Even the 2012 version of Thor, he could do the same thing, fly up, wait till Ghost runs out of invisibility, smite her, and then just smite the rest of the team pretty easily. And then Sentry would be the one tough fight, but if he wins it, then the whole thing goes to the original Avengers. So if Sentry wins this fight, it will be the craziest comeback, and he'll win the whole thing, because like I said, if Sentry beats Thor, then Sentry beats everyone, and the New Avengers win. They get all the points. But if Thor beats Sentry, then it confirms that the New Avengers would lose this fight, and the OG Avengers are just way better. So how would this fight go? And this is 2012 Thor, so he's not like Odin level yet. He's not Ragnarok Thor, he's not Endgame Thor. This is 2012, much younger Thor versus the Sentry. I think it'd be a close fight. I don't think it'd be one-sided either way. Thor's incredibly fast, but Sentry is faster. We see that in the movie. Thor's incredibly strong, and I don't know that Sentry is necessarily stronger, to be honest. But I mean, I don't have any. The feat thing, there aren't any feats really from Sentry yet. He wasn't trying in the movie. So MCU Sentry, I'm gonna just say he's probably at least as strong as like Thor is in 2012's film. So we'll say they're both good on strength. Experience, of course, we're gonna give that to Thor, who by that point in 2012 had probably had hundreds of battles in his life. So for sure, we'll give that to Thor as a big point. And then I guess just superpowers in general. I think considering the fact that Sentry has telekinesis and heat vision, and Thor obviously has crazy lightning powers, I think they're kind of equal. With Mjolnir as a weapon, I'd say they're kind of equal. They're both super powerful tools. But right now it's looking more like a Thor win. Now, honestly, it's too early to tell with MCU Sentry if he actually could beat Thor. I probably lean towards the fact that this new Sentry does appear to be so powerful. I think if 2012 Thor was standing there, the way that the new Avengers were the way the Thunderbolts at the time were trying to beat up Sentry, I don't think 2012 Thor could stand there and take that beating the same way Sentry did. I don't think Thor could just stand there and barely move and have 0 damage. I think Thor would have felt at least a couple of those attacks, for sure, based on like the Thor film from back then, and even 2012 Avengers film. Like, he could take damage, he could bleed. I'm pretty sure he's bleeding at least a little bit in the 2012 fight. Sentry wouldn't have been. So I do think Sentry would beat 2012 Thor. If we're talking Endgame Thor, where he's super powerful, or Love and Thunder Thor, that's another video I can do. But if we're talking the OG original Avengers, then I'm gonna give it to Sentry. But hey, even if you want to argue that 2012 Thor would beat up Sentry, the Void would come out. And I don't think 2012 Thor can defeat the Void. I don't think any of the OG Avengers could defeat the Void. And that W would still then technically go to the new Avengers. So I hate to say it, but because of Sentry, I think it's a surprise comeback. And even though it's technically 2-4 to the new Avengers, because I'm going to give the W to Sentry and say that he beats Thor. So even though technically the OG Avengers should still win because it's 4-2, 4 wins to the OG Avengers. If this is a real fight, like I said, if this was like a brawl, everyone's fighting together, new Avengers clashing with the old Avengers, Sentry wipes out all the OG Avengers, including Thor. Not easily, Thor would be the real fight, but he'd beat 2012 Thor, and even if he didn't, the Void would. So the W goes to the new Avengers, guys. I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but hey, argue with me different. I'm not saying the new Avengers are better than the original Avengers. Of course not. The original Avengers are awesome. Sentry's like the only good thing about the new Avengers. But he is really that powerful. He is stronger than all the Avengers rolled into one. The Void is one of his forms. It's a transformation. It's a power he has. How would the OG Avengers defeat that if it came out? I don't even think the Void would need to come out. I think this Sentry is that strong. And Sentry in the comics is also stronger than all the Avengers. Now, hear me out. Thor does get incredibly powerful the older he gets. So if we're talking New Avengers 2025 Sentry versus Thor Love and Thunder Thor, that's a different conversation, guys. I'll do that in a different video if this video gets enough thumbs up and people comment below that they want to see it, because that could go differently. Even with the Void involved, I think that Thor is becoming incredibly powerful and his feats are quite crazy. And hear me out. We could do a fight where we don't include the Void. Is the Void hacks? What about regular Sentry versus current Thor? Like if Sentry and Thor had a spar right now in the MCU present day before Avengers Doomsday, who would win that spar? Thor with all his experience and powers, Sentry who has no experience, that would be his first spar with someone who can actually hurt him. Can Sentry hurt him? Let me know below what you guys think. And if you want, I'll make another video on that topic. But that is the new Avengers versus the original Avengers. I could also do a video with the new Avengers versus the other new Avengers. As in, you know, the new Captain America, Shang-Chi, Captain Marvel versus Sentry. How would that go? I can do that video if you guys enjoyed this one. The new Avengers versus the other new Avengers. Anyway, I'm out. Don't hate me for the result.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.